Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Nova Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a really cool video that I actually saw my friend McKay do originally. She did this video first, and it is books I thought I'd hate but ended up loving. And I thought it was really fun for me to watch that video and see like the books that she thought she'd hate but she ended up loving. And then I will be doing a video later in the week where it's vice versa, where books I thought I'd love but ended up hating. So with all that being said, make sure you check out McKay's video. I'll have her channel if you don't follow her already, and her video that she did linked in the description box below. She's just one of the people I saw most recently do this. Let's just go ahead and jump into books I thought I'd hate but ended up loving. So the first one is actually a historical, and that is Night Secrets by Kat Martin. So when I bought this book, I bought it for the step back. The step back is gorgeous. I wish I could show you, but I actually sent it to Jess at Peace Love Books because she was going to Denver and Kat Martin was originally supposed to be there and I was going to have her sign my first edition with the step back to me. She didn't end up going, so it's still at Jess's house, but it's fine. I'll get it back at some point. But Night Secrets basically has a beautiful step back. It's a bathtub, scene with him in it and she's washing him. And I thought, okay, this is going to be like one of those crazy older historicals, right? I was blown away because not only was it a really good love story, but it had really good disability representation in it for it being an older historical, because sometimes older historicals will use words that are now just, you're not supposed to use those kind of words, you know what I mean? And I was actually thoroughly surprised. Basically, we see our main character. I think it starts off with like a pirate ship and something, or ship. She's like setting sail or something, and it's been a while since I read this, but I remember reading it and loving it. There's that caretaking scene where after he becomes paralyzed, I think it's from the waist down. Yeah, from the waist down on a ship, because he's like the captain or something like that. He is on a ship. They originally met on a ship. She originally stowed away on his ship, and that's how she was taken from I think the Americas to Britain, if I'm not mistaken. And he finds her, and they have like a little thing, but then once he's paralyzed, they call her after some year. I think it's been a year or two or something like that. It's been a certain amount of time, and she comes to take care of him and kind of like get him back into the same guy that he was, because he's different. Once you deal with a disability like that, you change a little bit. That's kind of normal. And yeah, I really love the representation. It was so good. I was thoroughly surprised, but I really enjoyed that one. The next one that I thought that I was going to actually hate, and that's Angel's Blood by Nalini Singh. So I recently read the first 6 books in this series. I think it was last summer, and I fell in love with the characters. Honestly, I fell in love with, what is their name? I can't remember their names. They have really cool names, but the first 3 books follow the same couple, so it's kind of like this overarching plot. I think there's 15 books in this series. I think I'm on the 8th book, if I'm not mistaken. But after the first 3 books, you get 1 or 2 side characters in books 3 and 4, and I think book 6 is when we pick back up with the plot of the original couple. But this is a very cool angel fantasy paranormal romance. I would say it's border fantasy paranormal. It's not in a fantasy world. It's set in like what our world would be, like New York City and stuff like that. But you have this female character who's very strong and independent, and you have this like love that spans, like time, and they're just like fated kind of to be together. It gives you that kind of feeling. And I just love fated mates in any fantasy or paranormal romance. And when I read this, I thought it was going to be like an okay book. I wouldn't say I thought I'd hate it, but I thought it just wouldn't be for me, right? And I ended up loving it. Flew through the first 6 books, and talking about it makes me want to like dive into like the series again, because I love Nalini Singh's writing in this series. I think it's so well done, and I want to get caught up at some point. Hopefully by the time my life is over, I will get caught up with the series because it's a long one. The next book that I thought I'd hate but ended up loving is A Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. So the only reason I thought I would hate this book, and this is not a romance, just throwing this out there, this is more historical fiction, because I know the story of Achilles and Patroclus. I know how it ends, and it is not a happily ever after. And I thought, I'm going to read this historical fiction because I knew it was a historical fiction going in, and I'm going to hate it, right? I think that Madeline Miller wrote a masterpiece with this book, and I know some people, it's blown up. I read it before it really blew up on TikTok, just because I was reading historical fiction like 2 years ago. I was reading more historical fiction than I am now. And when I read this book, I remember like putting the book down and being like, this is not how she's going to end this book. Like she took her own spin on it. It was magical and it was beautiful and it was such an amazing story. And another reason why I thought I was going to hate it is because I read Circe by Madeline Miller, And that wasn't my favorite, the way that she told that story. I prefer the way that she told the Song of Achilles. Circe was a little bit more of like historically fiction-y, and Song of Achilles was more of like this overall fiction book, like a retelling. So it had more historical aspects in both of them, but I just felt with Circe it was a lot more heavy. So I personally enjoy the Song of Achilles more. But yeah, I thought I was gonna hate that book. But I ended up loving it. So if you haven't read it, I highly suggest it. Get your tissues ready because you're gonna cry. Just throwing that one out there. The next book I thought I was gonna hate but ended up loving was It Ain't Me Babe by Tilly Cole. Now, Tilly Cole writes some dark shit. Like, she writes hella dark stuff. And I think before I picked up It Ain't Me Babe, I picked up 1,000 Boy Kisses. And I don't care what anyone says. 1,000 Boy Kisses is not a romance. It's not a romance. And I will die on that hill, okay? I will argue it till the day I die. So I went into this book thinking, I don't know if her writing's going to be for me. I'm really scared. Also, I heard the way that the motorcycle club in this series talk to female characters isn't the best. They kind of like degrade them. They use like woman and, you know, those type of terms. It's not always my favorite, but I thought, let me give it a try. This book was amazing. This book, you find out, the first 3 books in this series, the female characters come from a cult. So the first one, she's escaping, and she's met our main male character. His name is Mute. He does not speak, but they give him the nickname Mute. And he's the club president, basically. And so he's met her at one point. And their story is so beautiful. I think I would say the first 3 books in this series is really, really good. It's very dark. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone because it is an extremely dark book, but an extremely dark series. But the way that Tilly Cole tells a love story is that she drags these characters through it, and they're going through a healing journey at the same time. And so they're going through a lot emotionally, physically, mentally, all of the above, trying to live with someone, trying to have a romance and fall in love after, you know, these female characters have been taken from this cult where they've been fed all of this information that's not true, you know, their whole life. And then they're thrown into this motorcycle club, which is also very different in the way that, you know, normal people live. So it was just overall a great book. The next one is The Hunter by Kerrigan Byrne. So if you know me, The Hunter by Kerrigan Byrne is probably one of my favorite historical romances of all time, honestly. I think that this book makes me want to reread it, talking about it, but I liked The Highwaymen, but it wasn't my favorite. And I thought going into The Hunter, I don't know if this is for me. It's a little bit darker of a historical, I just don't know if it's for me. And I ended up absolutely loving this book. I just think that this story was so different, but also so beautiful when I read it, because you have this main male character who has had a very traumatic past. You see at the prologue, he watched his mother die. She was raped in front of him, and then they killed her. And then he was also sexually assaulted, and he's grown up, and now he's basically an assassin, and he's going to kill our female character because that's the job that he has. And he can't do it. Then he finds out that she has a son, so it hits a little bit too close to home, and it's their story, and it's beautiful, and it's magical, and it's so damn good. Christopher Argent is so amazing. Literally, I want a Christopher Argent in my life. Not gonna lie, I'll take the assassin and everything. I want a Christopher Argent, let me just say that. So the next book that I have is gonna surprise some people, and that's House of Sky and Breath by Sarah J. Maas. So I read Crescent City 1. What is that one called? A House of Blood, Earth and Blood, the red one. I read the first one and I thought, this ain't it. I've at that point read all of Throne of Glass and I read all of ACOTAR, and I just felt like it was too fantasy for me. It was very, very heavy on the fantasy, light on the romance, and I thought, I don't know if I can read the next book, and I don't know if I'm even going to like it, considering they're 800 plus pages. Very dense. They're very dense, fantasies, right? But then, of course, Sarah J. Maas takes a turn and does things that I wasn't expecting, okay? And I'm thankful that this book was not spoiled for me, but I really loved that book. The way that she ended that book is not anywhere where I thought she was going to go. I can't say what it is, but I love the characters, Rune Dannon, Bryce Hunt, Rune Dannon, that day and night, their love story too. It's just she threw everything that she was missing and what I was missing in the first book. She put it all into the second book, and it really hit for me for some reason. That one did. So I'm hoping that the next book is still in the Crescent City world, still very true to how the second book was and not how the first book was. I just felt like it was way too heavy on the fantasy for me, and I hope she sticks with how the second book went and where it's a good blend of everything, fantasy, romance, friendships, all of that. So that's what I'm hoping for. But the last book I have for this video is American Queen by Sierra Simone. So I'm someone who, if you know me, any romance that has a political aspect is my shit. Like, I eat it up, right? Like, that's literally one of my favorite things, is when you mix like a good president, guy in Congress, anything like that, with like a good love story, right? I just really, really love that, right? And this was pitched to me as throuple, so it's 3 people in a relationship, but it's the president, the vice president, and the president's wife. And when I tell you, that is all, I think it was Sam who pitched it to me, that like we were in Nashville last year at a book signing. She was like, you haven't read this? I think you're gonna love it, because she knows I love political stuff, right? And she pitched it to me and I thought, oh shit, I'm gonna love this. And I went home and I binged all 3 of those books. And I had such a good time with them. I will say the first book and part of the second book were my favorite, but the ending of the second book into the third book is not my favorite. I think she could have just done a duet and been fine with it, but she turned that into a trilogy. But overall, she turned it into such a fun and entertaining and in-depth story that I was hooked from the beginning, and I could not stop reading until I finished the trilogy, honestly. But those are the books that I thought that I would hate but ended up loving, and I hope you enjoyed this video. It's something a little different, but for the emoji for this video, drop me a bathtub because the first book is Night Secrets and the step back's a bathtub. I don't know. Just drop me a bathtub because that's what I thought of. Totally random. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys.